Welcome back to NTheRealestWay podcast by Marqes Smith, where we talk about so many topics in the realest way. On this podcast episode, I want to talk about embracing it. Embracing every season, embracing every moment of your life that sometimes we don't want to do. We don't want to embrace those bad things, and we don't want to accept the truth of who we are. Because everybody wants to, let's talk about it. Everybody wants to be this amazing. Oh, let's talk about all the accomplishments, all the accolades, every achievement you won. Let's talk about the great things when it comes to being successful. But we don't ever want to talk about the things that got us here. We don't ever want to accept the things that got us here. And I feel like that's one of the issues that I was facing. I was watching this video on Instagram, and it was this I forget his name, but he always posted something about consistency, discipline. And one post he made, I reshared it on my story on Instagram. He was talking about how in 2021, he was in a season where he thought he was happy. He was okay in this season. He was comfortable in this season. Like, he had friends, he had people he loved. He thought everything was perfect. Harmony, a happy ending, right? Then here comes 2022. This is a villain arc. He's acting out. He's cussing out people. He thought that the people that he loved, the people he cared about him. And it was so much of a challenge. And then in 2023, this year, he realized that he wanted compassion and love. And he wanted to be that kind of person who healed people instead of hurting. And I found that beautiful. And I was like, I most definitely have to do my own spinoff and make my own version of it and how I feel about the situation, because I like listening to people, understanding people, and then talking about my own experience in the realest way. So, that's what we're going to do. So going off of his analogy and his depiction and using it in my life, it is very much and almost exactly the same. When I was in 2021, I was still in high school. I was learning things. I wouldn't say I was happy, but I was in a state in my mind where everything was at least okay. It was at least okay in my mind. I would go through life and I would just be experiencing things, and I would be doing this and doing that, and I had my challenges, but I was like, I love these people. I care about these people. I'm always around these people. We don't really actually pay attention sometimes about how much people have access to us. Like, we don't really realize that these people, there was a point in high school, and this is going to be crazy. Like, I would look at people and I'm like, I've known you for the entirety of who I was. Like, I've known you my entire life. You've known me your entire life. And we walk around school like, oh yeah, that's just Bob right there. You realize you've known this person since you came to school, and we've basically been in school our entire lives, to the point where I'm at now. I was like, and it hit me like, I'm really spending all of my time with these people. And that's a whole nother conversation about realizing the impact of who you're around and who has access to you. But I just didn't realize that in high school, I didn't really necessarily have a choice. And of course I had a choice, but like, in terms of a single A school, a small school, you see the same people every day. You talk to those people every day. And I didn't realize how much of an access they had into my life. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, I literally known you all my life. I literally know you. I probably know you. This is gonna sound crazy, right? There was a whole conversation about, being at school. We're more at school. At least I was. I was more at school than I was at home. Like, I basically lived at school. Let's take a fact away from all of the extra activities I was doing out of school I was there for hours and hours. Outside of that, I literally spent my entire life in high school, in school. In general, I was literally around these people more than I was with my family. Like, realize that. So when I say I was in a state where, like, I've known these people, they've known me, like, we learn how to at least coincide. Some of us coexist and, work together to some point. I mean, we basically known each other all life. So I went through life and I've seen things that triggered me, but in that season of my life, I didn't know how to speak about it. I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't know what to do to protect myself, the boundaries, the healthy things that I know that I needed to have. Now, I didn't know that then. And I didn't know how to speak up for myself in a way to where I had healthy ways of saying it and healthy ways of doing it. And that was a season. And I was triggered. I got triggered, and I was in a season where I was giving of people, and I was giving so much of myself that I didn't even know who I was. And I thought I knew who I was, but I was not the person I thought I was. And I wasn't fully embracing the entirety of who I was. I mean, because I didn't know. So that was 2021. And in 2022, I got to a point where I was like, you know what? I'm tired of being mistreated. But again, I didn't know how to do it in a healthy way of correcting people with boundaries and everything that you're and how you're supposed to do it, at least in a way to where it was moving towards something. I was always, you know what, I don't care. I was cussing people out. I was getting in arguments and physical altercations with people. It was so much so of a toxic thing. So toxic, so unhealthy. I didn't, and again, like, if you're not taught these things, you're not gonna know. If nobody tells you how to do something healthy, of course, like, you have to see things. I need some water for a minute. Give me a second. I'm about to die. Okay. If nobody is telling you these things, if you're not seeing these things, if you people don't realize how much of an impact their environment is and how much it affects them. If all you've ever seen in your life is toxicness and unhealthy things, 9 times out of 10, at least for me, you react in a way to where you are in the environment. My environment wasn't as healthy as it should be as a human being. So of course, the way I tried to solve issues was the same way that I saw them, and it wasn't healthy. So I would lash out at people. I would do all these crazy things, just being angry, and just it was never moving towards a healthy place. It was always something. And I got to a point where I was like, I don't care anymore. I don't care how you feel. I'm tired of being treated how I'm being treated, and you don't respect me. Of course, it wasn't always like that. I've had my moments where everything was okay. Everything was beautiful. I had relationships with people that were amazing. I wouldn't take anything from those relationships. But the entirety of that season, of that year, it was built upon by anger and trauma and not healing, because I didn't know how to. And I wasn't in a state of my mind of understanding how to do that and how to be that person who moved towards that. So when I graduated high school, I was still dealing with these issues. I went to basic training. I was still dealing with these issues, still having altercations, still not being able to speak in a healthy way towards people around me. And the crazy thing about it was, I got transitioned to a season that I never, like, it was something that was totally different. I was in high school. I was still a student. I had to listen to these people. I had to, like, it was basically, I'm a child and these are adults. All the way until I came and I graduated high school. But when I went to basic training, these are adults. These are people who I'm working with, that I'm living with. At some point, I had to realize that, yes, I'm not as mature. I'm not an adult into a lot of people's eyes. They still think of me as a child. That is fine. I don't, you can perceive and say whatever you want to say. But when I got into an environment where I was around adults, grown people, fully grown people, and they were acting like children, I had no choice. But at the time, I think I had no choice but to change the entire way of how I used to think, and of how I would have never have done anything that I was doing in basic training that I did in high school. But again, I had to adapt, and I had to understand that right now I had to understand that everything that I did before, everything that it was a part of who I am. It was a part of how I got to where I am right now. If I went back to high school, I won't lie that I wouldn't be triggered. I most definitely would be triggered. But I know how to move in a better state of mind. And I know how to move with better intention and with love and with care. I wouldn't do exactly everything I did in the exact ways that I did before. If I went back to basic training, I wouldn't have did those things the way I did before. I had to understand right now that that was a part of who I am, and I can't take it away from myself. You take it away, you mean nothing to yourself at that point. You're building upon things that you think don't even exist. Imagine this. You're building a tower, and every time you make a mistake in the tower, you keep building upon it, and then you take away this brick. Then you take away that brick. Oh, well, that brick is a little cracked, and it's a little damaged, and it's been through a lot. Let me take this one away, too. Let me take this one away. And eventually, you're going to get to a point where you're so high up, and you've accomplished so much, it means nothing because you don't even remember who you are. They're going to ask you, Smith, how did you get to this point? I don't even know. And eventually you're going to crumble because everything that got you to where you are, you don't even acknowledge. You don't even remember. You took it away. You said it didn't even matter. You said it didn't even exist. It's important to understand that embracing it, understanding it, and then changing it is important. In 2021, I did not know how to speak about how I felt. I didn't know how to say, hey, you can't talk to me that way. You can't treat me that way. I will not allow it. So I lashed out. 2022, I was in a very conflicted mindset. And every time somebody triggered me and did something that hurted me, I lashed out. I was aggressive. I was doing all of these things. And I never moved towards healing. I never moved towards purpose and intention of love. Now I'm in 2021, and I was pushed into a season of my life where it was nothing but understanding and moving, and it was different. And I always had somebody above me telling me this and telling me that, and they steered me their own way in their own path. I'm by myself now. I'm not saying I'm lonely. I'm alone. I have people around me, but I've never been in a season where I had this much control of myself. And in the beginning, I didn't know what to do. I relapsed sometimes. I went back into states of mind where I was harming other people because they harmed me, intentionally or unintentionally. I was in a state where I didn't care in the beginning. But the more I realized and I decided that I actually control my life. I control how I can feel about certain things. I can control who has access to me. Once I realized that everything I could control it, that's when all that healing started to happen and it started working. It wasn't until recent time when I really had an eye-opener about the entirety of who I am. And more so, I got closer to the purpose of what God has asked me to do on this planet. I've never been closer. And I'm not saying I'm close to the end. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying I've gotten closer. And I can see a little bit more than I did before. There were times before when I literally could only see darkness. Am I moving in the right way? Am I going backwards? What if I took the wrong turn? What if this and what about that? It was so much so of just moving and trusting God, and I didn't have any way to see what the future was going to be like. But now that I am where I am right now, and I have more trust in God, and God continues to show me in every season that there's something I need to take from this and embrace it. You have to embrace it. You have to embrace it before you can change it. And I had to realize that the journey is the most important thing. We get so stuck on the destination. We get so stuck on, oh, I want to be here. And then you get there and you're like, okay, well, I'm here now. Let me go on to the next thing. We don't enjoy the journey, the seasons that are going to get us to the climax of our life. And I don't ever want to stop growing, but I wasn't embracing myself as much as I was telling myself that I was. And I was pretending and lying to myself about everything and who I was. In 2021, 2022, in my mind, I would not be considered a good person because I wasn't moving with the intention of helping people and learning. But it was trauma. It was pain. It was not my decision necessarily of how I wanted to react because the resources, the tools I had, you can only use what you have in front of you until you start seeing things in life where you can like, okay, I can put this two together and this can actually be better. When you start actually having your own mind and when you can actually start making your own decisions, that's when you can start doing everything that you know that you can do. So if you feel like you're in a state of your life where I don't know how to heal, I don't know how to change, you got to start changing the environment that you're in. You don't want to gossip no more. So why are you hanging around those people who gossip? Go somewhere where people are actually doing something purposeful with their lives. You don't want to go out and always go out to fast food restaurants and overeat and do all these things. So go to the gym or go to a place where people are actively, being intentional with how they eat. We have to realize that we have the control and we decide what we want to happen in our life. We make that decision. Nobody makes that decision before you. They don't do it for you. Nobody will do it for you. You can't, I promise you. And it was an eye opener. It was a lesson I had to learn about every season, and I had to embrace it. And I had to love it. I'm learning to love it. I haven't fully loved it yet. There's so much that happened to me that was my fault, and it was other people's fault, but I haven't forgiven either. Why did I do that to myself? Why did I let those people treat me that way? Why did I go so long without doing anything about it? Why did I allow that person to go so long without doing anything about it? But the more I go through life and I learn, and I'm intentional with growing and learning, the more I realize that it gets not necessarily easier because of the challenges, but it gets easier because I'm dealing with it head on every single time with God. And I'm being intentional. That is the key word. Everything that we do, intention. Why am I doing this? What was the reason? I want a season of love and light. So why am I cussing people out every time they offend me? Being intentional. But understand that when you go through moments of vulnerability and you lash out and you're not the best person that you are, you have to accept it. And you have to be accountable. And I wanted to have a conversation about something recently that happened in my life where in the beginning I wasn't accountable for it. I didn't accept it. I made that choice. I made that mistake. I was the one who did that. You can't blame it on anybody else. I used my own two legs and got myself in that predicament. I made that choice. I made that decision. And you have to realize when you're owning a lesson, you're owning accountability, that nobody can save you from it. Nobody can say, okay, well, this is what you need to. It's not yours to teach me. It's not yours to take away. You can't take away my lesson. You can't teach me my lesson. I have to learn my lesson myself. God has given me this so that I can learn it. And I'm not going to learn it from somebody whose intentions probably ain't even for the best. There's some people who will literally criticize you and try to belittle you in a way just because. There's no intention behind their actually doing it. There's nothing, when I say there's no intention behind it, there's no purpose in healing and growth. What is the reason for you saying this? And I had to realize that everything has to be intentional. And I had to be intentional with my accountability. so that I can embrace it. I had to accept it. I made that choice. I made that decision. And I have to deal with the consequences of that decision. Again, in the previous podcast episode, I talked about cause and effect. The cause and the effect. You did this and this happened. But every cause is not a bad thing. But it's what you make of it. You go out there and you do something crazy, expect something crazy to happen back to you. It's an energy transference. It's going to happen. You put good things out into the world, eventually good things are going to come back to you. It may not happen right in the moment. It may not be instantaneous, but it's going to happen. And I was literally lying to myself about that too, about that situation, about that accountability, not wanting to fully accept it and embrace it. But I got into a point where it happened. I did what I did. I accept it. And I give it to God. What's the point of worrying about something that you have no control over anymore? The best thing that you can do is move forward and try not to make that mistake. I wouldn't even say it was a mistake necessarily, because I don't believe that anything I ever did was a mistake. It was a learning experience. It was something that I needed to learn in order to never do it again. That's how life is. You go through a lesson and you have to learn, and that's what happens. You go through it and you continue to go through it until you learn the lesson. I find that so simple, yet so difficult. And that goes for every season of being with people I didn't want to be with, but I thought I needed to be with. Well, these people are always here and I'm always here. So I have no choice but to embrace them and love them and allow them to treat me how they wanted to treat me, because I didn't know any better. I just want to be a better person. I want to be a person who heals and connects people. I want to be someone who, at the end of the day, I'm adding something to this world. Something good. Something that is of love. I want to be something that people can look to and look towards. I never understood the people who go out of their way to instill and to bring about negativity and so much chaos into the world. I never understood them. But now I pray to God to understand those people, and I pray for them. I pray that they get healing, and I pray that they get whatever it is that's causing them pain, because hurt people. And I didn't want to hurt anybody anymore in this season, not intentionally. I didn't want to go out of my way to hurt somebody. And the sooner we realize that people act out of the inner of who they are, and it's not necessarily about us, we're just simply triggering them, the more we can realize that we have our own issues to deal with and they have their own. I had to realize that I didn't want to be another reason why somebody didn't want to get up in the morning. Why somebody had a bad day. Why somebody lashed out at somebody else and that person lashed out on somebody else, because it was a cycle of hurt people. I didn't want to be that kind of person who caused a cycle to continue. I truly believe that this world is in a state where it's in chaos. And it's gonna be gone. I don't think we need to change the little things. I think we need to literally eradicate everything that we fundamentally believed in order to achieve a bigger, a better goal. I had to do it in my life. I had to literally remove every part of myself, the good parts too, because in those good parts there's still bad things, and it's not in a toxic way. I was watching this person on Instagram, and she was talking about an identity switch, and you have to let go of everything that you were before in order to become this person that you want now, because this person that you are right now is why you have what you have right now. If you want this to happen to you, what are you doing to get there? What are you doing to have that attainable? Because right now you're not going to get it. And I'm continually being molded. I'm continually changing myself. There's some days where I'm like, I don't want to change this about myself. I love this about myself. This is why I am who I am. I don't want to lose it. That's ego. That's fear. That's being scared to be vulnerable and to change because you're scared that you're going to lose something about yourself, and that's the whole point. You're supposed to lose that. You need to lose that. So you can go out and become something that is so much better. Embrace it and then change it. You can't change it without embracing it, because as soon as you think that you're done with this and you get triggered, you're back to square one. You're back to cussing people out in high school. I don't want to act anymore out of pain. No more do I want to be the person who people look at and they're like, mm-mm. And it's not about perception. Of course it's about perception, but it's not. It's like I was watching Sarah Jakes Robert, and she was talking about, how do I word this? Your intention may not be the impact of what you did. You may have meant something this way and it came out that way. It doesn't change the fact that that was your impact and how you made that person feel. You can't, and you have to realize that you can't be that person. You can't be like, well, okay, I meant it this way, and if they meant it that way, it's not, it's like, what am I supposed to do? Change. We live together. We work together. This is all of ours. We all live here. So why not change it? Why not make it better for other people to live? And I'm not saying change who you are, but there's certain ways where you can be true to yourself without trying to take away from somebody else, without trying to hurt somebody else. Because you don't have to, and this is the real truth. This is the real tea about the situation. If you're being everything that you are, everything that God has called you to be, if you're all of that, I mean, if tomorrow you were that person, fully that person, in all of your power and your love and your healing, you will never, ever take away from somebody else. No matter how successful you become. And I had to realize that people can grow and shine right beside you. It doesn't take away from your light. They have no power over you, only God. And you have no power over them, no matter how much you think that you do. And when people came and people did, I remember one time somebody told me that somebody was listening to my podcast episode, and right, they were like, oh my goodness, this person has a podcast. Oh my gosh, right? And they decided to give me a rating that was like, with like, their intention was to hurt me and to harm me. And I'm going to say this from the bottom of my heart. I could have 0 stars on my podcast, and I'm going to continue to make this podcast. I don't care if it was, you could have the best intentions and gave me 0 stars. You could have the worst intentions. You don't get to stop me. You don't get to tell me that this is where this is the end of who I am. You don't get to say, oh, bye, boom, and I just stop. You don't have that power. I don't even have that power. I'm doing this because this is a purpose thing. This is my purpose. God has called me to do this. So no, I don't care about how your intention is when it comes to harming me. It does not move me. It does not impact me. I've healed so much. I've grown so much. And I had to realize that the person I was before, that person was doing the best they could with what they had. All the resources they had, they did what they could to survive. We were surviving. So when are we going to actually live? I don't want to be that person who does anything to just survive. I don't want to be that person who reacts that way because that's the only way that I know how to react, and it's unhealthy. So I embraced it about myself. I accepted it. This is why I act that way. Okay, so let's heal from it. Let's grow from it. Let's learn from it. And let's move forward. And when we talk about embracing and accepting, something that just came in my mind was the simple fact that I don't be accepting everything about the podcast sometimes. Sometimes I get a little nervous. Oh, you hear about my podcast? You hear about my YouTube channel? Oh, don't watch it right in front of me. I've gotten better. I've gotten more comfortable about it all, but I know that I have a long way to go. And it's just weird. It's like weird to me. Oh yeah, I'm in a state of vulnerability. This is me being vulnerable. Every time I press play and I start talking and I post it, I'm being vulnerable. I don't think it's a bad thing. I know it's not a bad thing. I just get a little sensitive because I care so much about it. I'm so passionate about it. Well, what if they don't like it? What if they, and it's not like it's just a way of like, just a little anxiety, a little fear that I'm going to get over, but I have to embrace it and also embrace reading some more books because my vocabulary, I'm tired of saying, you have to understand all these words because I used to read all the time. I used to just be reading and reading and reading, and I would have the most immaculate vocabulary. I'm talking about I could just do anything with essay. Oh yeah, get into it. I ain't saying language arts and grammar and all that stuff was my best subject, but it was one of my best subjects. Okay, so embracing every day. And there was this person. I'm always on Instagram watching a video learning. I'm not always learning from Instagram, but I always take a lot from Instagram and anything I'm absorbing at the time. And I watched this video about not thinking when people are saying something, because when you're thinking, you're not understanding. I don't know how to think without trying to understand. I don't know how to understand without trying to think. But I know that is something that I need to work on. Always thinking. I'm always thinking. I'm never not thinking. I wonder, as human beings, could we ever not think? Could we literally just understand? I've gotten to a point where I understand more. There was a season where we had that whole debacle. It's not a debacle, but this whole thing about Black Lives Matter and all these situations with all these people. And I would be so angry at people, and I would never want to listen to their side of their point, even though I knew that deep down, I knew that in order to have a relationship with the rest of the world, We have to come to a place where we're vulnerable and we understand each other. We have a conversation, even though we may not agree with anything the other person is saying. Right now, if I had a conversation, I may still lash out a little bit, but I would never be the same person as I was before. I embraced it and I understood it. And I was listening to something Amanda Seales said, and they're not gonna listen if you're yelling at them. Who can actually do that, right? You want to have an honest conversation with somebody. You want them to be vulnerable with you, but you're yelling at them. I had to embrace that about myself. I was not the best person to have a conversation to if we didn't have the same mutual agreements, if we didn't understand the same things. Because when I was speaking out of a way of wanting you to hear my side, and everything that you said meant nothing. I literally was only speaking to get my point across. And I had to understand that. I had to embrace it before I could change it. And now I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen to what you have to say. I'm going to understand. I'm going to try to understand. And I'm going to try to let you understand how I feel so we can come to a understanding between each other. Because that's how the world is going to change. It's not going to change any other way. It's not going to magically just change until we actually put forth the effort. Both parties, everybody. If we actually make the effort to change and to do something and be something more outside of ourselves and everything that we believe in. Because the world is not just what we believe in. Of course, it's our perception. Our perception is our reality. But the entire world is not our perception. And it sure as hell ain't our reality. It's everybody's. And the more we realize that it's not just I, me, them. It's us. It's we. It's everybody. Embrace it. Embrace it. I have a long way to go, though. I'm literally telling you, like, I have so much more I haven't even reached. And that is so crazy to me. Like, we can go this entire lifetime without even scratching the surface of who we are. Even if you were intentional about it, there's so much that we will never even unlock and know about ourselves that is so interesting to me. You could go your entire life learning yourself, and you could change, and you would learn yourself some more, and you would change. Because every time you learn and you go through life, your perception and your reality changes, and everything about you changes. And then you learn something else about you. Then you learn, okay, well, this is why I didn't like that, and this is why. But you will never reach a point where you fully, ever, truly know yourself. Because how will you ever know yourself if you're constantly changing? I don't think that's a bad thing, though. I think that's a beautiful thing. The simple fact that I don't know everything about myself. It's actually peaceful when you think about that. Not in a way of ignorance. There was a whole conversation about ignorance and choosing to be ignorant and just being ignorant, right? Because you just don't know. I just don't know a lot of things. But once we become ignorant out of not wanting to acknowledge something, that's an issue. And that's a bigger issue that we need to talk about, that needs to be talked about. Because what in the world? You're literally choosing to be ignorant. There's people out here suffering. I had a conversation with somebody and we were talking about it. I'm like, when we don't choose to be a part of humanity in all of it, if we choose to turn a blind eye to people suffering, what does that make us? That makes you somebody full of privilege. If you're in a state of comfortability where you're able to turn away from something, you have privilege. Does that make sense to you? There's a group of people suffering. You're in high school, right? And there's a group of people who wear blue hair. And there's so many laws and so many things where if you wear blue hair, you're an evil person, and there's so much bad. There's so much stigmatisms and so many things that they apply to people with blue hair, right? Just an example. And people are treating them so bad. There's just so much injustice in the school, and you're turning a blind eye. You're privileged. You're privileged enough to not have blue hair. You're privileged enough to where you can walk and you can do this. And that's when we realize that life is not fair. And we could be the reason why it's not. You, that one person, you could be the reason why people are suffering by choosing to be ignorant and not just being ignorant. Because you will never know everything. And the people who say they know everything, they're almost cussed. They're lying. They're lying. You don't know everything. You may have had experiences in your life to where you know a lot, and you may know more than me because you experienced it, but you're not all knowing. And wisdom is not always knowledge. They're different. I'm not saying one is better than the other and one is, it's not, I'm not trying to say that, but it's the truth. So embrace that the people, me sometimes, I sometimes choose, it's too painful, like seeing people suffer sometimes, it's so painful. Sometimes I turn around, sometimes I don't even want to be a part of it. That's privilege. The simple fact that you can decide to say no. I don't want to deal with that right now. I don't want to see that right now. Let me turn my phone off. That's privilege. And everybody who's not directly dealing with it, that's not directly affecting them, you have some kind of privilege because you're not dealing with it. So what do we do to help those people who are not able to have that kind of privilege? We educate ourselves and we choose not to be ignorant on purpose. And we move with love and with intention every single day. And you're going to fall short. You're not going to understand everything. But I would rather be around people who were actively trying than people who chose not to at all. And that's what I told people. I would be in relationships with people, in conversation with people, and I would say, well, how do you deal with this person? They're such a bad person, and I never perceived them the way that you perceived them. I never experienced that person the way you experienced them. And even when I seen those characteristics, those things about them that they were displaying in front of me, there was more to them than what you actually saw. Sometimes we look at people and we see all that they have right in front of them and we take a picture. And then we say, okay, that's it, honey. That's the end of them and that's the end of everything that they are. I just took a picture and look, they're going to be that person until I die. And I'm going to act and treat them like that person until they die. So when you see that person acting that way, because that's how you're treating them, what can you expect? Like, that's literally the question. I got to a point where I was like, okay, I took a picture of you when I first saw you, but that's not all that you are. Let's have a conversation. Why are you that way? Are you really that person that you're displaying outwardly? But you're trying. And I'm trying to understand you. The problem is we get to a point where we have no interest in trying. And you're not losing any of who you are by trying to understand other people. You can understand people without giving everything that you are in order to save them. I'm not trying to save them. I'm not trying to heal them. I'm trying to understand them so that then we can help each other. I understand you more, so okay, this triggers you, so let's talk about it. You don't have to lose who you are. You don't have to go into a state of vulnerability where you feel attacked and you feel threatened that you can't help somebody else. Embrace it. Embrace that this is ours. This is my life. Everything that happens around me, whether good or bad, is a decision, and it's a part of why I am that way. And that's a part of why the environment is that way. You wake up every day angry, mad, disappointed. All you're going to walk around and see is the very same thing that you're feeling. Oh, that was a word. It really took so much out of me. And I'm just, oh, I'd be so grateful to have a time where I can just talk about these things and have important conversations in the realest way. Sometimes I'm talking, well, not but when I'm talking, but before I make the podcast episode, I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to talk about, but is it going to flow? Is it going to continue? And once I start talking and I keep going, the more I can realize and I can see, hey, this is God right here. This is intention. And if you could go back to my first podcast episode, you can see that I embraced a lot of things. At one point I was clipping so much stuff. Like, oh, I stuttered. Oh, or I did this or I did that. That was something that was vulnerable. So I clipped it. And I would basically have boom, 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 boom. Like I would talk and then boom like this. And I would try to make it flow. But I would be so uncomfortable with a stutter. I'd embrace it. I'm not perfect. I'm not human. I can change it. I haven't been reading as much as I need to. I promise you, the more you realize that you can change a lot of things that you don't like, you can do that. You want to have a more fluent way of speaking and have so much more to talk about, so many more ways to say different things, then read. Continually challenge your mind. In anything, in everything. We are our limit. And we tell ourselves when we can stop. But if you and God, because God already knows. So when you decide that you can continue and continue and can continue to shine as bright as you know that you can, that's when it becomes limitless to your mind. You're already limitless. But once you realize that there's no stopping me, I can learn every word in the dictionary if I wanted to, and say it and speak it and know it as and truly in my heart. But I have to apply and put the work into it. But first I got to embrace it. I got to accept that I don't know this word. How do I spell this word? How do you spell extracurricular? Okay? How do you spell that word? Once you get to that state, once you get to that understanding and that acceptance, and you embrace it, then you can change it. It's so beautiful. The simple fact that we as human beings and everything on this earth can change. And nothing really ever stays the same. There's a song on Adventure Time. Oh, I love it so much. Everything stays. Oh my goodness. Even when you leave it exactly where it was, it changes. And nothing is ever really the same. So I want to close this podcast episode off by saying I'm so thankful. I'm grateful. I'm full of love. I'm full of love. I want to highlight very important things. In 2021, I was in a season of understanding myself and learning myself and realizing that I was a little triggered. 2022, I realized that I was so triggered that I was lashing out on people. I was angry. In 2023, I realized that I'm the person who can decide and change and embrace everything I was before. And that was the beautiful thing about it. And every decision and every choice and every experience I had, it made me into the beautiful person that I am right now. The beautiful person that you are right now. So like I say at the end of every podcast episode, I give thanks to the utmost, to the highest power, God. I'm thankful for my friends and my family. I'm thankful for the listeners of this podcast, the viewers of this podcast, the people who support me, the people who don't even know me. I am truly, truly grateful. This is NTheRealestWay podcast. Out.